If you like to laugh, and who doesn't, then you've come to the right place. Welcome to My Funny House with the Powell brothers. Frank Powell is a real estate broker who was born and raised in San Diego, along with Frank's brother Mark, a real estate broker who also lives in San Diego. Each week, the Powell brothers bring in a special guest comedian to share hilarious real estate stories so you can learn what can go really right and what can go really wrong with home improvements and home ownership. So now, let's get into it with My Funny House. Here are your hosts, Frank and Mark Powell on The Answer San Diego.
Good morning, San Diego. My name is Mark Powell, and I would like to introduce my brother over here.
My name is Frank Powell. Welcome. Happy Saturday morning. What are we doing today, Mark? Besides, we have a little surprise. Can I just tell them right away?
Well, it's not a little surprise. It's a big
surprise,
deal
right?
Because this is 2 weeks in a row.
2 weeks in a row, we have Maria Herman, our co-host, and the legendary Comedy Heights producer in studio with us after this
Hey! Maria's back. She is
so
awesome.
happy to be here.
It's so nice to have the actual person in studio as opposed to Zooming all over. And I'm sure everybody listening is tired of Zooming. We didn't even know what that word was a year ago. Now everyone knows what it is.
I thought it meant going fast.
Yeah,
Remember
zoom,
that
zoom,
Toyota
zoom.
ad or whatever? Zoom, zoom. Zoom, zoom.
Yeah,
Remember
zoom,
that?
There was a song, Zoom, Zoom.
Oh, yeah, that was
Oh, now you're really showing your age.
Heck, really? Okay. This week, we are talking about something that's really sparked an interest in everybody throughout the state of California. It's auxiliary dwelling units, also known as granny flats. There's been a big push due to our housing shortage to allow people to build these units on their property. And we just happen to have an expert on auxiliary dwelling units, and that expert is sitting right next to me. And
Frank Powell.
Frank Powell. Frank, why are you an expert on this?
Because I built one in my front yard to prove it could be done. And I spent about $200,000 to show, to test the city with a permit process and all that other stuff. But they're called accessory dwelling units now, not auxiliary. They used to be called auxiliary dwelling, but now they're called ADUs or accessory dwelling units.
So they've changed the name of everything.
Well,
I need to know
right.
why they're called a granny flat at all. I mean, really? Granddads aren't going to live there?
No.
What's the story? Is that just because you guys die first?
No, they're gender specific. The gender specific units.
Actually, she's right. It is because the male typically dies before the female, and you end up taking care of your granny.
Well, the grandpa ones came.
Well, we have a grandpa flat? We can call it whatever you want.
Well, you
You can put whatever you want. Some people just call it a granny flat, and then they rent it out to not a granny.
No. But Frank, that's a good point.
For the purposes of the granny flat, I think when you rent it, you're just obviously then you're a granny.
Well,
Frank,
that
makes sense, doesn't it? Mark, if you're going to rent one of these things, you will be a granny.
I'm close. I'm not close to being a granny.
Yeah, maybe it's granny's flat, and she wants to rent it out. So it depends how you take it.
That sounds
Well,
like
Frank,
a granny I'm going to
yes.
be.
Can you rent, if you build a granny flat or an
Yes.
ADU on your property, can
Right.
you actually rent it out to somebody other than a family member?
Yes, you can, but let's go back a little bit because I want to start by saying the reason why these things become more popular is because we have two crises in California. One of them is a homeless, and one of them is inventory and house pricing, okay? So the government, the local officials know that in the next 20 years, we're going to have serious problems about building new houses, affordable housing, and the homeless situation. So one of the pieces of the pie, the big picture is how can we produce more housing in a small amount of time? And then they started looking closer and closer in these auxiliary dwelling units and allowing people to build basically another home on their property, which is called an R1, residential one. You can only have one piece of property on there. Well, now they're letting you extend it into basically an R2 where you're going to have two houses on the same
It's
property.
like a zoning issue.
It was a zoning issue. They rezoned it.
But is it zoned differently, or is it still R1?
It's actually still an R1, and they just giving it an exception. So that's how it goes.
What do you
Okay,
think?
so I'm just curious on how, actually, if you think about it, the homeless have been experts at this for a very long time. They've been building on little additions. So how is this supposed to help the homeless as well, or did you just mention that was along with they're not being.
If you look at the demographics of homeless, you may have a picture in your mind that is not correct. It doesn't really address homeless. Homeless people are somebody that doesn't have a lot of family around. They may have got laid off. They missed a couple paychecks. Now they got evicted, and they are homeless. But they have an engineer degree. They're not mentally disabled. They're just actually they're actually
They're in
houseless.
transition. They're in transitional homelessness.
Right. So there's different types of people who are homeless. There are those who probably need medical attention and need to be supervised in a medical environment. And then there's ones that are just down and out on their luck without a support system that you and I may have because we were born and raised here.
So renting a granny flat would be good for somebody who is experiencing
absolutely.
that.
So it'd be like, hey, I get to supplement my income by renting out this granny flat. I take care of a problem that's international, not just domestic, about people looking for homes, and make a little bit of money on the side.
I like it.
Well, does a granny flat if you can build a granny flat on your property? Does it have to have a bedroom, or can it just be a box?
Can it just be a box?
Really?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, what do you want when you have a granny flat? Typically, you want one bedroom and then a separate living room, or you can have like a studio. But to make things conducive, all you're really doing is putting a wall. So if I was to build one, which I did, I wanted a one bedroom. I wanted higher ceilings because it's going to be a smaller house. So you always want to go 9-foot ceilings or higher. And then you want a living room, combination room, kitchen, where you have the same beautiful materials that you use in a regular house, only it's just downsized. However, it used to be, the law was if you can only build 50% of the gross of your house. So if you have a 1,000 square foot house, make the math easy, you can only build up to a 500 square foot granny flat. In San Diego City, you could build up to a 1,300 foot granny flat, even if your house is 1,000 square feet.
Really?
So, yes.
That
so
doesn't
are
sound
you
like
sure?
a granny
I'm
flat
absolutely
anymore.
positive.
Really?
Yes.
So your granny flat
Does
can
not
be
have
big.
to. It could be bigger than your actual.
So why
house.
not live in the granny flat and rent out the other house?
People are doing that too because you're downsizing. So you have this house,
Yeah.
and you can rent it out and build a granny flat in the backyard, and then put a family in the front yard. And then you also have like assisted living. If somebody's in the front yard and they take care of you, and you're actually the granny in the backyard, you work together.
What do you think?
I'm impressed. I know where the three of us are living from.
know. I'm gonna live
from
in
here on
Frank's.
in. We're not going to need to worry about anything. And when you're old, I'll take care of you both.
Frank,
Promise.
here's another question. Okay, let's just say,
Maybe.
let's say you
Maybe.
you have you want to build a granny flat,
Right.
But you have two sets of grandparents. You have the parents from the husband's side, and you have the parents from the wife's side.
Right.
Can you build more than one granny
Well,
flat?
it sounds like it's going to be a key party. That's all.
Exactly.
That's all I'm saying.
They could live together.
Actually,
people
you
should
could
have
build
fun in their old age. The four of you are
Oh, God.
together.
Can you
now.
imagine? That'd be funny.
with a jacuzzi in the middle.
Oh my
A
God!
site you don't want
It
to
would
see.
be like senior dating.
Yeah.
You know?
Well, seniors date too.
Yeah.
You know,
Okay.
Yeah.
So, but what is it? Can you build?
you can build more than one. Correct.
How many can you build?
2.
So if I own a property and the lot is big enough, I can get a permit to build 2 individual granny flats?
Currently, right now, with what they're doing, the answer is yes, but that also changes. That's these granny flats are they may come and go because obviously there's going to be people complaining about parking situations, renting it out to the wrong people. So it's not an issue yet because we just started doing this in San Diego in the last 5 years, kind of getting it wired. Another thing is that if you build a granny flat less than 500 square feet, so let's say it's 499 square feet, in San Diego, you don't have to worry about the setbacks on the side of your yard. So let's say
What's a setback?
a setback is where you're allowed to build a structure relative to the perimeter of your property line. So in other words, from the sidewalk, it's 10 feet in before you can start building anything in a house. On the side, so if you measure the sidewalk, the inner edge of the sidewalk, go 10 feet in, then you can start your construction there. On the sides, it's typically 3 to 5 feet, but to make it simple, we'll make 5 feet. So you cannot build right on your fence line or property line.
Right.
You got to push it 5 feet in. Well, that 5 feet is a lot of room to build a house, even though you don't think about it, because 5 feet by 20 feet is a lot of square footage. So 499, you can actually build right on your property line. That would become your fence.
That's cool.
That's something, the city passed that. So now you have more of a backyard and you're not pushing everything out from your property line.
So I have to ask something because I don't know what. So a granny flat it's a separate building.
It's a separate structure. Absolutely.
I don't know if I was the neighbor to someone who then ends up building a structure right on the property line.
I'd be bummed.
Yeah, that would be.
They're like right there.
That would be
That's
sad.
correct, but you have to do the good for the most people. So that neighbor may be upset, but the person that you put in that house who's been on the street will be happy. So it's a matter of being, if you're going to be a neighbor, a good community leader, you allow this to happen right now because we have a crisis. You may not be homeless,
Right.
but that person who is homeless, and you may end up homeless. You never know what goes on in life.
Okay,
just-
so what if you have the one granny flat and it's right on the property line, and then the neighbor says, "This is a great idea," and then they build their granny flat right on the property line, and they're bumping
Joining,
up
oh my
against
God.
each other.
And
Is that allowed?
That's called a condo.
I mean,
It's a condo.
sharing
but I
a
think
sharing
the
a
grannies
twin
might
home.
like it.
This is something that people, I think, should know prior to building a granny flat. Will a granny flat increase your property value?
Well, it should, absolutely, because when you have a rental unit on your property and you can get a supplemental income and you can use that, or you can use it as an office or a separate business, then it would typically increase the value of your overall property. So I'd say absolutely.
So you can use it as a business.
Well, you can use your house as a business. Everyone works at home. There's a lot of businesses from home. It depends what kind of business. If you're raising chickens, you may have a problem, or manufacturing things, molting lead, you may have a problem. But if it's an online business where you just need a computer, yeah, you can do a business from home.
So I've had a total turnaround in thinking about this, because at first I thought, well, I don't want my mother living that close to me in a granny flat, but if I could put her to work, that
Absolutely
would make things
Get her a
completely
sewing
different.
machine, have a sweatshop going.
Absolutely, absolutely.
You have to remember that
Changes everything.
you will-
Canning, you're doing canning this week. I know you don't know what that is, but you're doing it.
I have a granny. My mother-in-law lives in our granny flat, and there's so much privacy. It's no big deal. It's just like a neighbor. Like your neighbor is very close to most houses. You live right by your neighbor, even a condo, and you do have the privacy. But it's a really good place to put an in-law that may need a little bit of help, where she can come over and visit with her grandkids, and then she just has to walk 10 steps to her house. It actually worked out for me. I recommend them highly before it's taken off, where you can't do that anymore. I'd say to do it, but you also want to make sure you do call the Powell brothers, because it's the general contractor can make or break the project. Trust me on that. There's a lot of people that claim they can build a granny flat. They have no idea what they're doing. They don't know the current laws. They don't know the ordinances.
Didn't you get rid of your first contractor?
First contractor, second contractor, my third contractor worked out, and it did take me a lot of due diligence and a lot of serious interviews. And if you want to know the questions to ask, call the Powell brothers, and I'll tell you what to ask them.
Well,
to make
I
sure.
have a question.
Go ahead.
You want to hear my question,
Yeah, I do.
Maria?
I do. I can't wait.
What if you don't? Okay, what if you don't have a lot of room in your backyard or front yard?
Right.
Can you convert your garage into a granny flat?
Right now, the city is allowing the conversion of a garage. They used to not allow it because you have a lot of, you got the water heater in there, you got usually the heaters, you got chemicals. But right now, because I said as a crisis, the government has changed to go, hey, let's go ahead and allow them to convert a garage. So right now you can, but depending on when you hear this show, if it's a playback in a year from now, you want to check your city ordinances for sure before you start.
Well, how
doing that.
long does it take to build a granny flat?
How long does it take to build a
I don't
granny
know.
flat?
If
depends,
I had to
because-
do it, it'd take a long time.
Wait, is Granny involved? Does she help with the building?
Of course.
I tell
She
the-
carries the lumber. You have to have her carry the
Bring
lumber.
another brick, Mom. Come on. Put your back into it.
Exactly.
I guarantee it's not going to be the time that the guy says it's going to be. So allow 2 or 3 more months after he says. So if he says 6 months, we'll probably be there 9 months to a year.
I
Go
think
ahead.
this is a great idea. I think I'm going to build an ADU, a granny flat, in our garage, and then I'll get my mother to invent something IT. I mean, like Apple, because if you were in just a granny flat, that would be the canning, embroidery, sewing section. But if you're in the garage, it better be something spectacular.
Yeah, exactly
She
right.
better be inventing a computer or something.
Hey, okay, I've seen this happen. I've seen people convert their garage or building structures, and they don't have a permit. Do you have to have a permit to build a granny flat, or can you just build it,
Okay, so why get a permit?
Yeah, why?
Okay, I'm going to tell you why.
All right.
Because general contractors tend to take shortcuts in how they do
All of
things.
them or just some?
No, there's some who are legit, but most of them tend to take corners, and they should be watched. And some of them they don't know the current rules and regulations that pertain to what their job is because they
Right.
change all the time. So the permit guy is the guy who gets to give the bad news to the general contractor, so you don't have to and say you cannot build it that way, you got to build it this way. So, and also, if you have a fire in that garage and it's not permitted, the fire insurance will not cover you. So your insurance is on a structure that has permits. So always get the permit. It's done better with a permit. It may take longer. You're going to pay more, but the investment is there. If you don't do it and something goes wrong, that's when you're going to realize I should have had a permit done. And if you
Right.
sell the house, they're going to want a permit with that, and they may make you tear it down.
Right, exactly. When you go to sell, that's when you hit the problem.
Okay, when it
Correct.
comes to getting a permit,
But listen, Mark, before that,
Okay.
there's some people right now that have like a garage and they have a person living on top of it, but they're scared to tell anyone that they're living there because it's a non-permitted. The city has a way that they can permit an already built structure. You just call the city. They'll get the inspectors out there. You may have to change a few things, but they're not going to make you knock it all down and do it over again. So there are ways to get a non-permitted structure permitted now. Don't be scared. Just do it.
then we're talking about the city of San Diego.
Correct.
There's I think 14 cities in
A lot
the
of
county.
cities,
So
yeah, you have
are
to-
they all the same?
No.
Okay, what's the difference?
Well, some of them will give a permit, some of them won't, depending on what their local ordinances are. Everything's it's like the weather here. So macroclimate is the weather at the beach is different than the weather inland. You know, there's a desert, and then there's salt air. Same with the different cities. Some of them the topography is different. What they require is different. What they feel and voted on as safety precautions are different. So always check your city ordinances, which you can find online. It's not a big deal. You don't have to go anywhere. Just go online and check it out.
Do the cities ever just change their pricing structure depending on what else they want to do with the money? And
I
they
think
need,
so.
Well, that's a political
they need
question.
a little bit
Yeah,
more
but
money.
exactly.
We'll just jack up the permit
Yeah.
price.
Well, you know what? Permits are a way that they increase the general fund, so that's why they're issuing. That's why sometimes it takes a lot of money. What they do with the money, I can't tell you because I'm not a politician, thank God. But yeah, the permit prices could bounce from 100 to 1,000. You just don't know.
So Frank, when you're building a granny flat, when you started, it was about a year ago when you started. But isn't the price more expensive now because of
Oh my
lumber?
gosh!
So
okay,
what's going on now with this stuff?
So currently, those of you who don't know, if you have a project pending, and you got a bid, the guy may or may not honor the bid because, for example, all construction material, I'll just be general, went up 30%.
Wow.
So what used to cost, let's say, a $10 sheet of plywood is now $30. Okay, so if it was $30, now it's $90. So obviously, when you have to buy all the material to build a house, the guy has to figure out the price of the market today. It's like being on the market. These go up like beans and
Right.
everything else. Lumber, copper wire, steel wire.
Well, maybe you should disassemble your granny flat and make a profit.
Yeah, I
and
could.
start selling it.
But
have a
I
big-
can tell-
Because
you
that
know?
makes sense.
Yeah.
There's never a
I think I'm going to send my mother over, and she can just use
can
some
just
extra
tell your-
work.
Well,
tell
here's
your-
what it.
I'm sorry, mother, you have to work extra
can sell the
hard,
plywood.
It's so expensive.
Exactly.
So what many people are doing is those people that are in a a 3-bedroom, 2-bath house and they're too old to be there, they can sell their house, get the proceeds from that house, and help out their in-laws to build it. And then you can do a trust, which makes sure that you get that house. So let's say the couple gets a divorce, you're not kicked out of there. So also when you do build a granny flat, depending on who lives there, you have to make sure that they're involved in a trust proceeding, so nothing happens
Hold on.
to them.
Let me get this right. So if you're a senior, you can sell your property, and if you want to live next to a relative, you
Yes.
can use those proceeds to build a granny flat, and then have extra money in the bank. Correct?
Correct.
Do you know how to do that?
Absolutely.
So
not
can
a-
somebody call you if they need to? If they-
Absolutely. I'll give you the steps.
Okay.
All free. Just call me. Trust me, I'll save you a lot of money, a lot of hassles, because I've been there. And it was hard for me because there were no regulations when I first did it, because I was one of the first people that make a legitimate, very nice granny flat that you'd go in and be proud of. I mean, I go inside that thing, I'm like, hey, this thing looks nicer than my house. And it's not as expensive as buying a condo. The average condo in San Diego is like $600,000. So if you could build a house in your front or backyard for $180,000, ready to go, and if it's smaller than mine and the materials, you can go even for about $120,000. It's a great investment.
Frank, let me ask you something, and then can you make these compliant for, let's say, handicapped? There's a term for that.
It's called ADA.
Okay, what does that mean?
The
Americans with-
American Disability Act.
Right.
That was for people that maybe, listen, you always want to go ADA when you build, because if you're not in a wheelchair, you will be. If you're not using a walker, you may have to. If there's somebody that's going to be a granny that's healthy, they're not going to be healthy their whole life. There's going to be a time where people have to come in and out. So you want to make sure that there's not a lot of seams. You want to make sure that you develop or design the bathroom to host a wheelchair in case you have to wash somebody in a wheelchair, which you don't have to have the curbs, and you can slope the drainage. You want to make sure that you have a disabled sink where a wheelchair can get under there.
Oh, so that's nice.
You want to make sure you have wider doors. They usually come in 28. You want 36-inch wide doors so the wheelchair can go in and out. You want to make sure when you build your island, there's enough room in there where a person in a wheelchair can reach and work on their stuff.
You do. You know a lot about that.
Oh,
You know so many things. I'm
Right. So
you're just like an encyclopedia of ADU.
Let's just sit here. We're not going to say anything.
You know, the first time when I saw ADU, I was like, "What is that? Adieu, adieu,
Adieu.
adieu."
It's a French name.
Yes, it's exactly like the sound of music. Adieu, adieu, to your adieu, adieu.
Hey, Frank, if you wanted,
welcome to my beautiful adieu.
Adieu.
Frank,
and good night.
if you want to, if a person actually really wants to build a granny flat, do they have to hire an architect or a draftsman, or are there some plans that they can get that are a lot cheaper?
The city actually has plans. They have 3 right now that you can go get. You go to the county, you can get them. They're already made, and the city knows how to set
Really?
the permits. Absolutely.
So
They're
it's
already
cheaper.
made. It's a lot cheaper. But I would suggest, depending on what you're looking for, what your design wants to be, that you can modify those designs and you can get something custom. It's really good.
So that's good news. You have a granny flat in your front yard. It's not in your backyard. But why did you put it in your front yard? Why didn't you just put it in the backyard
Because I didn't want my mother-in-law in my backyard looking at me all the time.
Oh, geez.
Okay, so I had enough room in my front yard.
She's going to hear this.
Yeah, I know.
What are you
She's going
doing
to hear
back
this.
there?
And you can't
What's
get
happening
rid of
in your
that statement.
backyard?
Hey, sometimes if I walk out naked in my backyard,
Oh,
yeah, so there you
jeez.
go.
Oh, he
We
says,
don't wanna
he
see
says
that.
it on the
No,
radio, but in real life, he's like
Yeah.
out there in
Yeah.
a caftan.
Yeah,
Nobody
exactly.
can see me.
That's right.
With his giant swimming pool.
Right.
You know?
So no, I just think for the privacy, and let's say that my mother-in-law decides to do something else and doesn't want to live there anymore, and I'm going to rent it to somebody else.
Perfect.
I wanted them in the front yard, so you have to plan.
So
like,
that's very important for people to know. You can put
Yes.
if you can place it in your front yard or
Right.
your backyard.
Right.
If your house is big enough, on the side yard.
correct. Do some measuring, because a lot of times you think your front yard's not big enough, and it actually is. So you got to do a lot of measuring. I would suggest to hire a draftman to come in there and start by measuring your yard and where you're going to put it and how it's going to be angled and what you want to do with it for the next 20 years, because you can also attach it to your house later.
That's good. That's good advice, Frank.
Yeah, thank you.
So speaking of turning your granny flat into a business, could you turn it into a comedy store?
Well, mine is a comedy store.
Because if you can't turn it into a comedy store and have shows there, where could you go if you wanted to see a good comedy
Yeah,
show?
well, if you don't go to Granny Flat, you want to go to watch Maria Herman at the Comedy Heights.
Right.
And
Yes.
that's a good segue. So let's see, how do we get in
Yes.
touch
How do
with
we
you?
do that?
Just Google Comedy Heights, comedyheights.com, and we have shows at Bay Bridge Brewing in Chula Vista every Friday. And starting Memorial Day, it's coming up.
And what happens in 2 days? What happens in 2 days from
In
now?
2 days?
What happens in 2 days?
It's my birthday.
Happy
Happy birthday.
Oh,
Happy
thank
birthday to you.
Thank you.
Happy
As a
birthday
special treat
to
for my mother.
Send
you know,
all the gifts to the radio station.
yes.
You know, everything.
Here's
And-
my Venmo.
Exactly.
Wait, what were we going to say about your mom?
What is I going to say? Well, I always call my mother on my birthday. And last year, so this year will be fun, because last year I call her and goes, "Isn't this about the time of day when you had me?" "Yes." And then she said, "And how old are you now?"
Yeah, exactly. I don't want to say that. What? I'm not going to tell you.
No, she didn't remember.
A lot of people say a birthday should be celebrated by the mom who gives birth, because that's her birthday,
Right,
not the person.
exactly.
Well,
I agree.
send another set of gifts to
Everyone
Maria's
is
mother.
fortunate enough to still have their mom living. Call them up.
Yep.
Doesn't have to be Mother's Day, and just tell them you love them.
Yeah, do
That's
it.
a good
Yeah,
idea.
there
Then
you
take
go.
their resume and hand
And-
it out everywhere so that they can find another place to
And
live.
and if you want to find out how to buy, sell, or if you have any real estate related questions, please call the Powell brothers at 858-922-7725 or see us online at where, Frank?
My Funny House.
No, not My Funny House. See us online at the Powell Brothers Realty, powellbrothersrealty.com. Thanks
you
for
go.
listening. Thanks for listening, everybody. We'll see you next week with another great show.
Thanks so much for joining us today for My Funny House with the Powell Brothers, right here on The Answer San Diego. Join us next week as the Powell Brothers bring you more funny stories of what can go really right and what can go really wrong with home improvements and home ownership, and bring the laughs to you with yet another hilarious guest comedian. To find out more about the Powell Brothers, be sure to check out their website at powellbrothersrealty.com, or you can visit myfunnyhouse.com. Again, thanks for being with us, and we'll see you next week for My Funny House on The Answer San Diego.